All. It's 9:30. We're going to go ahead and start this comprehensive plan public hearing of Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. May I have the, wow, there's a lot of feedback. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Baxter.
Here.
Commissioner Flores. Here. Mayor Marino.
Here.
Commissioner Powell. Here. Commissioner Sachs.
Here.
Commissioner Weiss.
Here.
Commissioner Woodward.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Flores, would you lead us in the invocation and the pledge, please?
All rise. Dear God, we are thankful for this day that you have given us, for its blessings, its opportunities, its challenges. We pray for the strength and the guidance of each day, for each day as it comes, for each day's duties, for each day's problems. May we be challenged to give our best always, and may we be assured of your presence with us. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have proof of publication?
Yeah. Yes, we have it. Thank you.
Thank you. And we need a motion to receive and file, please.
Second.
I have a first from Commissioner Weiss, the second from the Vice Mayor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? See, the motion carries. 7-0. Can we turn the volume down just a tad?
He's going to take care of it.
Okay. There we go. All right, we are on to the agenda and its approvals. Do we have any additions, deletions, or substitutions?
Yes, ma'am, we do. Item 4A1 on the add delete, that is administrative postponed. There's no action required by the board. Also, 5B1, there's a change in the motion, and the attached revised contract with the revised signature block is included in the add delete. We also received 84 comment cards that was, received today. And also, we received 8-1 through our emails for items 4C1 West End Crossing. We also have a couple of comment cards.
Okay. All right, may I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended? I have a motion from Bobby Powell, thank you, because I didn't know where it came from down there. I knew it came from down that way. And a second from Commissioner Woodward. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? See, the motion carries, 7-0. Anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda? On the consent agenda? Okay. We have 2 cards on the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, can we take a break until we get this worked out?
Jesus.
Is it, am I good?
Go right ahead.
Okay, 2 cards for 4C1, Pia Escora and Lisa Johnson.
Yeah. Ma'am, we don't have a consent agenda, so maybe, I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're on regular.
Oh, I apologize.
No, that was my fault. You are correct. We are out of sorts.
That's okay.
Is that better?
No. It's a,
Do we need a microphone for the recording, or can you just speak loud?
We're hearing it from here.
I think they would.
How about everybody turn their mics off?
They're off.
They're all off?
We're all off.
but we're still
We'll be
hearing
on
it
in a while, but
somewhere.
right now we're off. Are you off? I'm off. Are you off?
I'm off.
I'm on.
You're always on. Okay.
We don't have consent, I'm sorry.
No, it's my fault. We're so used to consent and I totally spaced it.
I should have removed something from the consent agenda.
Give us a couple minutes while we figure this out, please.
That was better.
This is better? Is that better now? Oh,
Is
I
it
have no
okay?
screen.
I'm gonna turn mine on. Is it still better?
Okay.
Testing 1, 2.
Testing 1, 2.
We're good.
Yeah. Okay.
At least you are.
All right. So we don't have a consent agenda. We adopted the additions, deletions, and modifications.
Public hearing.
Where are we now? Public hearings?
Adoption of the,
Adoption of the agenda.
So moved. Okay, second.
Flores, Woodward. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? See, the motion carries 7-0. We are now into the public hearing section. We have postponed 4A1.
we're on
Sorry,
item
3A1. Oh
3A1.
my
3A1.
gosh, public hearing 3A1, county proposed text amendment. May I just make a motion to, oh, I can't make the motion, sorry.
Do you have a card from 3A1?
Not on 3A1, no.
Aye.
Motion to approve 3A1.
For those listening, this is a topic that has been spoken about. We removed this last year. This is just cleaning it up. We appreciate staff's effort on this. We have a motion from Vice Mayor Baxter, a second from Commissioner Flores. All in favor?
Well, hold,
I can't hear it.
we need to, there's two options. Can you just make the motion to pick which option you would like?
They said they can't hear it.
Who can't hear?
1B.
What's the matter?
You want option A or B?
Option 1A or option 1B?
1B. As the person that used to represent the Bioscience Land Overlay Board or whatever it's called,
I can't hear you.
Burpa.
you can't hear me? My mic is on.
I,
Are we being recorded?
Who's hearing me now?
Not through the mic.
That's important. Put a mic is important.
Yeah. You want to switch seats? and
Here.
see?
Thank you. Can you hear me now? Okay. We'll share. This was a topic of conversation over the last year. This has sunset. This is cleaning it up. My opinion would be to adopt option 1B. And if I can get a motion for the adoption.
I will make that my motion. To adopt. I'll make the motion to adopt option 1B.
I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? See that the motion for adoption of 1B carries 7-0. Now that we're all hopefully on the same page. Yes. Yes.
While making that motion, for those listening at home, can you make sure that they understand what option 1B includes or entails?
Option 1B would be the removal of the entire overlay, including all the objectives and policies in the future land use element, also the intergovernment coordination element, and revising map LU 3.1, special planning areas.
Thank you very
of the map
much.
series.
Okay. Now, we have postponed 4A1. We are now going to go on to 4B, 4B1. Staff, do we need a presentation?
I believe the agent will, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, I was way ahead.
4B1 is the
So
conservation
this is a
land.
conservation
Yes.
land, and our staff from Tim Hayes and Deb Drum is here to present this item.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the Board of County Commission. For the record, Timothy Haynes of the Resources Protection Division at This item before you is for county amendments for lands purchased by the county at the request of And more specifically, this request includes amendments to the comprehensive plan to change the future land use designation to conservation on approximately 155 acres of our natural areas. These natural areas include Cypress Creek, Hungryland Slough, the Pine Glades natural areas, and 101 acres of our Palm Beach Heights Palomar Eco Site. And there will also be companion zoning amendments which will be heard at a later date. This requested action is consistent with past efforts to facilitate the appropriate future land use designations for the protection and preservation of our natural areas. And this request will allow these natural areas to continue in their state as intended. The planning staff analysis finds that these amendments further the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, is also consistent with the county directions, compatible with conservation lands, and meets the comprehensive plan requirements. At the January 10th Planning Commission hearing, Planning Commission approved these amendments by unanimous vote. Staff is also recommending approval for these requests with a motion to approve. This concludes my presentation, and I'm here to answer questions should you have any. Thank you.
Commissioner Sachs, your light is on.
Thank you. I absolutely love this idea. My question is this: is this specific, absolutely specific, to these 52 county parcels? And if it is, and I believe it is, can we possibly explore ways of doing this to other areas, other parcels of county-owned land?
So to answer your question, Commissioner, this is specific to those parcels which do constitute these 155 acres. At this time, these amendments are only and exclusively for county-owned lands. These do not seek to put any restrictions on privately owned properties. So that is what these amendments are intended to do.
My question is there are other parcels throughout the county that are county-owned. Is it possible to one day, not today, but one day, to also designate the future land designation for other county-owned lands to protect them in this future land designation?
Yes, so some of those properties that will be a part of the acquisition for our natural areas and purchase through our natural areas funding, those properties will be able to have an opportunity to have the appropriate future land use and zoning changes to allow those to continue as natural areas in perpetuity as part of our acquisition. So yes, you're welcome.
Patrick, your light is on.
Just wanted to add to that point, historically, staff has brought any of the properties we have for decades now and changed the future land use to conservation. So this is not out of the ordinary for what we do. And then, again, following up on board direction from a few months ago on the third-party issue on conservation, we're continuing to pursue that, and we'll bring that back to you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Any cards? Commissioner Weiss?
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just want to thank staff for bringing this forward, as you continually do, as you're acquiring, as the county acquires new properties, or it's brought to your all attention that it's something that we see fairly regularly coming through to have these future land use amendments put in place, and then the appropriate zoning. So very much appreciate it and very much support it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Madam Mayor, I'll make the motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
I have a first from Baxter, second from Woodward. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? See that the motion carries 7-0. Thank you all.
Mayor, don't forget we have a business impact estimate statement as well that we'll do motion to receive and file on, please.
May I have a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second.
Weiss, Baxter. All in favor? All opposed? See that the motion carries 7-0. Okay. Are we at 4C1 now? Okay. We're moving along.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. This is Twee Shutt for the record, Planning Division. This item will be presented by the agent first.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jeannie Dusher with Cutler & Hearing, and today I'll be presenting you West End Crossing. So our project team today is West End Crossing LLC, which is owned and operated by the Brock Development Group. They're well known in the community and everything they deliver is with excellence. Our legal counsel here with us today is Brian Seymour with Gunster and Don Hearing with Cutler and Hearing. So our request today is for a land use amendment from rural residential to commercial low. We are going to hear a lot today about the zoning, but I want to emphasize before you today is only the land use amendment. So for some site context, our site is located on the southeast corner of North Lake Boulevard and Seminole Pratt. Currently, this roadway is under construction, going to go from 2 lanes to 6 lanes on both sides. That is scheduled to be completed in May of 2025. Also, our site is located within the Acreage Neighborhood Plan, which was initially established in 1995 and later amended in 2008. And this is also located in the Western North Lake Corridor study, and this was also established in 98 and later modified in 2010. The acreage community in 1995 was a lot different, and the acreage neighborhood plan fit the community needs at that time. Most of the homes were about 5 to 10 acres separate from each other, so it was very rural in nature, and it was appropriate to have this type of study to preserve the rural nature. This was the acreage in 2010 when the North Lake Corridor study was later updated. Again, we saw significant growth in those 15 years, so they felt it was appropriate at that time to update the study. And this is the acreage neighborhood today. Most of the homes are about an acre to an acre and a half apart from each other. They grew. In the Western North Lake Corridor study, they had thought the population would be around 18,000. It actually now is 44,000. They did not anticipate the growth to this area. And just for comparison, this is the acreage in 1995 and then what it is in 2025. So a 30-year difference. We see that the land has developed significantly in this area and there is a need for commercial services. So this is the future land use in this area. Our site there is still that southeast corner of North Lake Boulevard and Seminole Pratt. The closest commercial is about 3.5 miles east on North Lake Boulevard, and then it's also about 3 miles south on Seminole Pratt. So we believe that this would be appropriate for commercial services immediate to this area. There's a lot of traffic passing through, and with the updated infrastructure that is proposed at the site that is under construction, that is scheduled to be complete in the next several months, this is appropriate. We understand the community concern, and we are willing to obviously work with them. We met with the ALA in December, but this is appropriate for a commercial node. It's meets the needs of the community, and we believe that this is appropriate in this area. This intersection is not rural anymore, and it is appropriate for commercial. And we want to thank your time today, and we want to also thank Palm Beach County staff. They've been excellent to work with, and we further are open to discussions.
Thank you. Staff have anything they'd like to add?
Yes, I would like to introduce Bryce Van Horn, our senior planner with the Planning Division, and we will have our staff analysis for the board's consideration, as well as all the other testimonials for today. So,
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Bryce Van Horn, with the Planning Division. Again, this is a large-scale future land use atlas amendment request known as West End Crossing, MUPD. As presented by Mr. Sharm, the subject site is comprised of, it's 5.39 acres. It's actually comprised of 3 lots currently together at the southeast corner of Seminole Pratt Whitney Road and North Lake Boulevard in the ex-urban tier of the county's growth management tier system. So this site is also within the acreage neighborhood plan and within the boundaries of the Western North Lake Corridor land use study. The applicant, again, is requesting a change in the future land use designation from rural residential 1 unit per 2.5 acres to the commercial low future land use with underlying 2.5. For some context, you may recall Last year, you heard a request for a private text amendment for 2 parcels on the west side of Seminole Pratt Whitney Road across from the subject site, and requesting to amend the ex-urban tier policies that would have allowed, if initiated, submittal of an amendment for commercial law office. For the subject site, the applicant also submitted a zoning application, which is being reviewed concurrently through the zoning division. The application is to rezone the subject site from agricultural residential, or AR zoning, to the multiple use plan development, or MUPD zoning, with a request for a gas station, 12 fueling positions, a convenience store, a restaurant with drive-through, general retail building, together totaling almost 11,500 square feet. So for some context of the larger general area, the subject site is within the unrecorded subdivision known as the acreage, also known as Royal Palm Beach Colony, generally characterized by 1.25 acre agricultural residential zone lots with our 2.5 future land use, and then the general overall area commonly referred to as the Central Western communities. Here you can also see Avenir, Bay Hill Estates, and other communities like Ancient Tree, Osprey Isles, Carlton Oaks, much further to the east within Palm Beach Gardens, as well as Ibis within West Palm Beach. So zoomed in a little bit further on the 5.93 acre site, showing the surrounding properties in the immediate vicinity. All of the surrounding properties here have residential R2.5 designation. As you can see here, there are a few vacant lots, vacant properties, but most are developed with single-family homes. The area in blue is county-owned for drainage and roadway improvements that are under construction for this intersection. And again, single-family homes are directly adjacent to the south on Hamlin Boulevard. I believe Jeannie mentioned that the roadway improvements were supposed to be completed in May of 2025, but I did contact engineering, and I believe that's extended by at least eight months. So I just wanted to give you some information on that. So for staff's assessment, the county is required by policy to consider recommendations and studies and neighborhood plans. So as mentioned previously, the subject site is within the boundaries of the acreage neighborhood plan and the Western North Lake Corridor land use study. This neighborhood plan effort was completed by the Acreage Landowners Association with assistance from county staff, and was received by the board by resolution in 1996, with some minor updates to recommendations in 2008. As indicated in the staff report, the site does not meet the recommendations for commercial in the neighborhood plan, including recommendations prohibiting gas stations. Regarding the Western North Lake Corridor land use study, the study was acknowledged by the board in 1998, leading to an interlocal agreement between the county, Palm Beach Gardens, and the city of West Palm Beach. The study's commercial demand findings were updated in 2010. Each of the local governments were to commit to considering the findings of the study. So as indicated in the report, the amendment is not consistent with the recommendations related to commercial, as the existing commercial approvals already exceed the commercial demand findings in the study. As demonstrated in the report, the applicant's justification is not adequate. The amendment only meets the location requirements for the ex-urban tier location criteria, which requires property to have frontage on 2 arterials. The applicant cites development within the mixed-use Avenir project and the city of Westlake, but this does not provide adequate justification for additional
high-intensity commercial uses on this specific site. The amendment is not compatible with, as proposed, although the site may be suitable for some neighborhood commercial uses given its location. The amendment with high trip-generating vehicular-based uses on this small site directly adjacent to residential is not consistent with the ex-urban tier policy to ensure development is compatible with the scale, mass, intensity of use, and character of the community. So I would also note that the net development area of the site is really only about 4.3 acres, given the parcel boundaries are to the center line of the roadways, and more than 1.5 acres of the subject site is road right-of-way easements for North Lake Boulevard and Seminole Pratt Whitney roads, which are under construction for improvements currently. As you can see, the site is again directly adjacent to, and in fact sharing a common border with the property line with several single-family homes to the south. So as such, staff is recommending denial. At the January 10th Planning Commission, the Planning Commission recommended denial also in an 8-4 vote. Should the BCC decide to transmit the amendment, staff is recommending a condition of approval requiring that the adoption of the future land use amendment and zoning application are held on the same date in order to ensure the board has an opportunity to review both the amendment and the zoning application together comprehensively. So we recommend a motion here to deny the transmittal. We also received several letters. They're in the correspondence exhibit. I think there's 3 letters, one from the ALA, the Acres Landowners Association, and then we received 6 or 7 letters in opposition also yesterday, which I believe you all also were copied on. This morning, there were additional correspondence that were sent to the Palm Beach County website. I believe those were distributed to you also. I believe over 84 letters or petitions objecting to the amendment. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no lights on at this time. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Van Horn. Appreciate your presentation. Going back to your slide, we were talking about the 2010 study, and I guess this was between the city of West Palm Beach, the county, and Palm Beach Gardens.
Right.
But that was done in 2010. Has there been any update to that study to understand the changes in demand potentially?
No, there hasn't. That study, which was initially done in 98, around 2000, and it was done because there were several amendments that were proposed along North Lake Boulevard for industrial. And because both both the cities and the county had an interest in this area, and there was conservation lands that the county was interested in preserving, that was part of the impetus for the study in the first place. In 2008, the board directed staff to pursue working with the city of West Palm Beach and Palm Beach Gardens to update the commercial demand findings because of other amendments that were coming in as well. One of them being on North Lake and Coconut on the southwest corner, which was a almost 30-acre site that received commercial low also. That was known as Shops at Indian Trails. That has since been annexed along with most of the properties between Grapeview and Bay Hill into Gardens. So they're no longer in the county's jurisdiction. We have not discussed, or the board has not directed any updates be pursued that would require working with the city and City of West Palm Beach and Palm Beach Gardens. We also have the ability to remove ourselves from the interlocal as well. But really what the interlocal agreement does is provide heightened notice requirements and the ability for the other municipalities to consider and provide comment on the findings of the study when there's a land use amendment or a development order application that comes in. So it works both ways, but no, I'm sorry. We have not done an update since 2010.
And then you also indicated in your presentation that you, as a staff assessment, that I guess you mentioned neighborhood commercial might be appropriate at that location. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So we recognize that this site is at the corner of two major arterial roadways with access really only to those roadways. We have a commercial location criteria policy that allows property owners to request commercial at those specific locations that meet the criteria. This is one of those sites. So we're not necessarily adverse to commercial low as a future land use at this site, but as proposed by the applicant's justification is based on the whole comprehensive proposal for a gas station, restaurant with drive-through, really high intense uses within the commercial that are essentially Class A conditional uses in the zoning application. But we don't feel that those uses are compatible comprehensively on this small site.
So, but what's in front of us today is just the land use, so that could be potentially reworked, and come in with a different lower intensity uses if this were to be transmitted, would that be something that, and would that in fact change staff's assessment if that were to happen?
That would be up to, I think, the applicant to decide what they
But they could do it, right? Because nothing's been approved yet.
Right.
Okay. And then lastly, in this I found, I was not aware of it, on the neighborhood plan, that there was, I don't want to say a prohibition, but there wasn't support for gas stations out in the acreage area. Do you know why that was put in place? Does that have to do with water, or?
It is mainly because the majority of the area is on wells. And the issue was contamination of the wells from the types of uses that would have fuel. So it not only included gas stations, it included things like salvage yards and other vehicle repair. So the recommendations were not to allow those types of uses in an area that was mostly on wells.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Van Horn, for your presentation. Let me ask you this question. This is the proposed to go from rural residential 1 unit per 2.5 acres to commercial low. And we know there's been this, the idea that ultimately it would end up being an MUPD. What are the changes and what are the allowances in commercial low as it relates to the potential land uses that are going to coincide with the zoning eventually?
Well, commercial low allows several zoning districts. Some of them are just standard districts like commercial, neighborhood commercial, community commercial, commercial low office, and multiple use planned development. This chart that you see right here are the uses that the ULDC, the Unified Land Development Code, allows to be requested in CL land use with MUPD zoning. The letters that you see there are the different approval letters, approval processes. So, for instance, a convenience store on its own, which is retail, is a P. That's a permitted use. It doesn't require approval by the board. The A's are Class A, requires approval by the board. D, DRO is a staff level approval, and so on.
Thank you. You indicate in here, in your report, that staff understands that this is the ultimate, I guess it's the impetus to ultimately end up with a gas station and the limited space there. In your professional opinion, does this land use change fit in with the current land uses that are surrounding? I know it's directly abutting residential. In your professional opinion, does this, would this be considered, and I know it's at an intersection, would this be considered any type of spot land use or spot zoning, or would it fit right in if we were to make this adjustment?
Well,
because it is at an intersection.
I would let our county attorney address the spot zoning issue.
Yeah, this is a planning decision for an individual parcel of land to change the future land use. It wouldn't be spot zoning, so spot zoning is inapplicable here.
So this is of course a legislative decision by the board. It's completely in your hands as a policy decision. This isn't quasi-judicial zoning hearing. As we stated in the staff report, we do feel that commercial low is that the site itself, the specific site, is appropriate for some neighborhood serving commercial uses, but as proposed by the applicant, with the high trip generating vehicular-based uses, the gas station, fast food restaurant, we don't feel that that's compatible and is not adequate justification for commercial low at this site.
Thank you. Follow up. So as per justification, knowing that ultimately it's the intent to build out with the motor vehicle fuel cells or gas station, that would be the challenge. But on its own, you would believe that if we didn't know that, and if this were approved today for the land use change, they could come back in with something with a lower intensity as an MUPD that would fit in with the fabric of the area that we're looking at.
They could.
Okay.
Obviously, it's up to the board. If you want to put any restrictions on a land use amendment, you could even do that with uses. So we've done it before. We have ordinances restricting uses or only allowing certain zoning uses within a site that was subject to an amendment, a future land use amendment. So it's up to the board, really.
Thank you.
Commissioner Woodward, your light is on.
Thank you. I was just hoping to get, you keep using the phrase neighborhood commercial. I was just curious, seems, I'm not saying that it is, but it seems almost subjective on what that means for neighborhood commercial. Could you explain, is it the gas station that's part of this that makes it not neighborhood commercial? Or, because it seems like that you're agreeing that the site is good for some sort of commercial in whatever neighborhood is. Just a little bit of guidance on what that actually means.
It could be retail. It could be a sit-down restaurant. It could be, like a pharmacy. Uses to typically serve the immediate area. And again, this is, we're talking about the acreage. So when you're looking at the immediate area, this is not the urban suburban tier where we have high density residential uses surrounding a site. So typically, like in this area, we have large lot development. The immediate area is really slightly larger, but so those are basically the types of uses that would serve the immediate area around this site. Obviously, it has some pass-by traffic, users that would use the site, but it's really specific for the compatibility of the uses that they're proposing.
If I may add, really, it's the intensity of the uses. One of those uses itself may not be a problem, but you have three main principal uses that are vehicular-based. There are, it's the zoning division representatives here. If you want to go into further in the site layout, that's not our purview for the planning division, but we're concerned, again, with the vehicular use and the internal and external movement with three principal uses that are heavily traffic along this area. That's really our concern. As far as the uses, neighborhood serving uses, yes, you may have some gas station and some, other fast food, but all together, all three together in one site that we know that will have lesser land area to develop is really our concern, the intensity of it, not just the uses themselves. So,
But since we're at the initiation or the transmittal phase, I mean, I feel like, are we getting ahead of ourselves a little bit on this? Or as far as we're not dealing in site plans or any of this at this stage. Is that correct?
We're looking at just the compatibility factors. And yes, there's a crossover between the compatibility of the site plan as well as the actual land use. And that's why, like I said, the current site plan that's in process right now, the zoning division can speak to that. Yes, the applicant can lower the intensity and make changes along the way, but as the board approves this, they could come in with, the maximum potential, and that's what we're letting. But the board has flexibility to condition. The board has flexibility to, do as needed to ensure the compatibility at this stage.
But today, the only thing that we're doing is amending this to commercial low. We are not talking about the zoning, we're not talking about what they want to do on the property. We're giving this property a different designation. That's all we're doing today.
Yes. And we would, as Bryce has said, that you could consider making sure that when it comes back at adoption, that the two application will be reviewed concurrently, and that way you'll get to be able to see the full breadth of the requests.
We do have four speaking cards. Sure. Okay. Pia Skora, Lisa Johnson, Hashem Corasange, I'm sorry, Stacy Joe Pufferbay, apologize.
Hi. Before I start, Acreage Landowners Association president has been delayed, so I just want to inform you that we do have a petition from our residents of 480 signatures asking for denial of this current proposal. So when you look at me, when I'm speaking to you, I want you to see 481 people. Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. We're back. As you know, our community is under tremendous external pressure due to surrounding development growth. We came to the acreage to get away from overdevelopment and commercialization. And wouldn't you know, it followed us here. Our community has repeatedly made it clear to county commissioners we do not want to turn into the communities that are being built around us. Their lifestyle is good for them, but it's not the lifestyle that we choose. The county and the Acreage Landowners Association collaborated on the Acreage Neighborhood Plan. We heard a comment that the plan was created some time ago, and while that is true, let's make it perfectly clear, the Acreage Plan was created for times just like these. It was the foresight of the county and landowners to create a plan that would protect the unique nature of our community. The Western North Lake Land Use Study was undertaken to study and manage growth to protect existing communities from times just like this. We appreciate the county staff has utilized those tools to assess and recommend denial of the current land use amendment proposal. And we appreciate that the County Planning Commission took their recommendation seriously to also recommend denial. While we expect that this property is more attractive for commercial use, we want to ensure that it's the right commercial. We are concerned about the size and type of commercial. We want to ensure that families living in existing residential homes adjacent to this property are not driven from their homes. We want to ensure that operating hours will not disrupt family life for close-by residents. We want to make sure that the well water we depend on is protected. We are concerned about bringing high-traffic generating retail into this already extremely over-trafficked intersection. It is ill-advised. We are concerned about the precedent that will be set by whatever commercial is approved for this property. As the Planning Commission and county staff have recognized, the current proposal does not align with the acreage neighborhood plan, as it is not compatible with maintaining the semi-rural, residential, equestrian, and agricultural nature of our community. Staff's review of the Western Corridor study makes it clear that existing commercial approvals already exceed the commercial demand findings of the study. So the proposal is not consistent with the county's comprehensive plan. We hope you will rely on the facts
Thank you.
that the Planning
Wrap it up,
Commission and
please.
staff reviewed and deny this proposal. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Johnson from Loxahatchee. I just wanted to go into a couple things. Years ago, we were involved in a feasibility study trying to see if it was feasible to incorporate. And the reason that I was involved is I knew how important home rule is. And because we didn't succeed to be able to vote for that, we still have, because we don't have home rule, but we do have the neighborhood plan that is for unincorporated areas. A lot of unincorporated areas would have that. I did want to read from one of the most, well, let me go. This was formally adopted in 1996 and received by resolution, and it was used to respect and protect the rural, residential, equestrian, agricultural character and compatibility of our community. I don't believe land was always 5 and 10 acres. The plots were set a long time ago, so it was set for that development. We don't have services. We didn't want services. That's why we moved out there for that rural life. We did have Westlake plop down in the middle of us. They gave us 2 gas stations, and we know there's 2 more coming on North Lake Boulevard, the Coconut intersection. We have plenty of gas. Most of us use Costco anyway. We just prefer that. So we're good with services. One of the most important things that was not mentioned, I don't think it was, is page 9, L9 of this of our neighborhood plan, and it states commercial zone property shall be 1 lot and has a 10-acre minimum. Where did that get lost? I don't know, but it's there, and you can look it up. It's right on the website. We do not want commercial property in less than 10 acres of property. The other things that I want to talk about is that gas station and the water retention pond that the county made next door. That picture didn't depict it enough. It's now a very large water containment area. And I went onto the property tax collector's map, and I used the tool for measurement. And from the gas tanks to where you pump gas to that pond is less than 500 feet. And to be more than 5, you have to be more than 500 feet for anything that could be used for public water. It's not exactly a wellhead, but it was built for the retention for possible drinking water. So with that being said, we would like to ask that you deny this land use amendment proposal as it is, because it's not suitable, approvable, or compatible with the neighborhood plan, and it's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan as is. I know you did not see the plan, but I would like if they could put that plan up there for you to see that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 more cards.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and County Commissioners. I see that on daily basis almost, we see more than 1,000 houses, residents will be permitted to live in that area, either Westlake or GL community or the coming more. And residents of these houses, they need a job. They need a commercial. They need a shopping. And best is to be local, rather than they drive 50 miles, 60 miles, go away, go to the Boca, go to the Jupiter and West Palm, and cause the traffic and more and more and more. I agree with the neighborhood-friendly commercial as much as possible. That's gonna reduce the traffic jam that we see right now in the street of the acreage. If you do investigate, you're gonna see that 90% of the traffic either because of the job or because of the shopping. If we have a local, so we are not gonna have a traffic, at least as much as now. So we have more residential, we need commercial at the same as a residential locally, not the 50 miles. And I see that you think about the entire Palm Beach County, not just one local area. If we drive, go to the Boca, so we can cause the traffic for 40 miles. Why not the half a mile? It's right there. I am pro neighborhood-friendly commercial as much as possible. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last card is Stacy Joe.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you very much for everybody for being here. I'm Stacey Jo Poffenbarger. I live in the acreage, and I'm here to voice my concern over the proposed development of this 5.93 acre lot into the gas station, the community center, all of this. What I'd like to say is, 2 days ago, we got an email blast out that with a petition. In those 2 days, there were we've got up to 482 signatures saying that we don't want this in our neighborhood. We don't get, I don't understand why exactly, but we don't get told like in advance or in a great enough time for people to leave their jobs and come here to talk to you to your faces, to tell you that this is not what we want in our neighborhood. Our well water is at stake. We're very concerned about, I understand, people think bring in jobs, and the traffic is already too much. The way of our lives have been already affected too much. If you live out there and you understand what all this overdevelopment is doing to our entire community, the wildlife, the effect that it's having, the coyotes that are taking the sheep out there. I know that it sounds like silly to people, but we live in a rural community on purpose. We've left the city life because that's not what we wanted for ourselves. We've moved out there to be left alone. We don't want these extra things. We don't need them. People have always traveled to go to do what we needed to do. We were fine until really like Westlake and all moved, and then it created a lot more traffic. But at the end of the day, the people who live there, it affects our life every single day on the daily. We should have the right to say this is not what we want, and we don't want it because the health risks that it imposes on us. We live on wells. Not everybody can afford a reverse osmosis system. Not everybody lives the way people live in the city. I've had enough of city life. Rural is the way that we wanted to be. Rural is what we would like to continue to be. And we just don't have a justification at all for any other. And I know that they kept saying that it was appropriate, but you know what? Sometimes things are appropriate, but that doesn't make them right. I don't know what appropriate even means. Maybe appropriate for business. Maybe appropriate for, people who want to, make land development. But for the people who live here and work here and live on the land, and we grow our own food, and it's not appropriate to have things like this. The extra fumes in the air and all of it. Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you very much. I really do appreciate your time and taking this into consideration and the seriousness of this, because it does impact our lives every day. And also in December, the Acreage Landowners Association, it was not approved there either. This is not something that we want. But I really do thank you very much all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have 2 non-speaking cards, both in opposition, and then the 84 public submitted on the website.
Thank you. Anyone have any additional questions or discussion? Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question for the applicant, potentially, but also just
You're
My
done.
time's up.
Sorry.
Time's up.
Thank you very much.
Here's the deal. I know we, as a board, have indicated that we're looking at one application, which is for the land use change. And in a perfect world, that works, right? We're looking at the land use change and we're not looking any further. However, comprehensively, we as a board, we have all got the backup. We've got the staff report that has been given to us. We've seen the site plan, so we also do know what is proposed. It's not a secret. So we can look at one thing by itself. However, comprehensively, we have the information in front of us. My question to the applicant would be, hearing from some of the homeowners and some of the people who live in the area, have there been meetings and concessions that have already happened and taken place with regard to perhaps making this something that's more manageable, that would mitigate some of the issues that people have? Are there proposals to adjust, the intensity level? I know you have a traffic engineer on board. Has that even, I know we're way out front, but we do know what's proposed under the MUPD land use, zoning eventually. We know it's commercial low now, but we do know it's not going to be a small convenience store or a small diner or something like that. We understand that, if I'm not mistaken.
So, Commissioner Powell, I want to back up for a second. No, we don't. That is what's proposed. That is what actually makes sense. But that has not finished a staff review. It has not been reviewed by the Zoning Commission. It is not completed. I'll give just one example. There was a discussion, which is, by the way, I want to be clear. If I lived there and I didn't do what I do, I would have this exact same concern. If I lived on a well, I'd be concerned about a gas station anywhere within 10 miles of me. I get that. But there's actual data, there's a lot of science that goes into that, all that review. And at a zoning commission, at a zoning hearing before you, we would talk about all of that. We would get into all of that detail. The problem is, if I sat here and I said, we'll just withdraw our application, we're not, to be clear. And all you're looking at is the land use. Everybody sort of agrees the commercial low makes sense. I think Bryce said that without what he called the high intensity uses, I could disagree with that, but regardless, that the commercial low is an acceptable land use. And what they're worried about is what comes next, but what comes next isn't done yet. And so concessions have been made. So I say that only because I'm going to answer your question, but I don't really want to talk about the site plan because we're not here about that. A car wash has been removed, additional buffering, change in design, trying to think through all of it. There were a number of different things. We did a lot of well reviews, by the way, where the wells were, how the statutes work, the requirements. We spoke with Durham quite a bit about preservation on site and things that needed to happen. So there's a whole lot that has gone into that. There was a meeting with the ALA in December. This is the first I've heard of 400 names. So if I'm not going to promise I'm going to call 400 people. Well, I'm not calling anybody because no one wants to talk to a lawyer. And just, by the way, I just realized, because I know you all know who I am, not everybody does. I apologize for the record, Brian Seymour. I'm the attorney for the applicant. But if they want to provide the 400 names, we could look, we can start to, because some folks we talked to, I happened to see the ALA Facebook page when this came up. There were people that were in favor, which of course no one ever comes out in favor. But we will continue those discussions. Oh, one, you're right, I don't know who he is. But we will continue those discussions. We'll continue those discussions with staff. I'm not going to tell you we're going to come back to you without a gas station. But I don't know that I'm going to come back with something that looks a little different, that we look at some of those issues. We'll continue those discussions. And then at that point, we will talk about all the details that go into that. If I think Tweez talked about the number of uses, we can look at that too, right? So all of that is stuff that gets into that stage. The odd part, as you pointed out, is we were sort of forced into, you got to put it all in as one. So you have one justification statement. You have one piece that includes all of that. The justification, for clarity, is not based on a gas station.
it's based on the commercial low. The zoning justification, we justify the gas station because we wanted the gas station, which, by the way, typically would have started with 16. They actually started at 12 because they knew 16 was already going to be, it didn't make sense, frankly, right? So we even before the application, there were thought process into that. So all we're asking, this is all my notes, by the way, that I am not reading now, but I'm going to use Commissioner Powell's question to just sort of throw it all at you. I apologize. We're at a place, we're not in 2010, right? The studies that were done, for instance, right? I think Commissioner Weiss, you talked about Gardens in West Palm. Well, that was before Avenir was approved by Gardens, before Gardens annexed and changed the land uses that were out there and zoning of other things on North Lake, before the expansion of North Lake, before the expansion of Seminole Pratt, before West Lake. If you went out today and started, you would have very different data than you had back then. And just like you have to update your comp plan every 3 years, you got to, 3 years, 5 years, I think it's 3 years on an EAR, 7 years on an EAR amendment. Forget the timing, but you have to update your comp plan. I'm trying to remember the statute off the top of my head. It's always a bad idea. But just as you do, there's a reason for that, because things change over the course of time. So all we're saying is this land use today should be transmitted, and we'll continue to talk, we'll continue to work, and we'll sit down with all of you too and talk about some of what we've all heard. We will go through this, we will go back, and if the ALA would like to meet again to talk about very specific concerns and we could try to accommodate, we will do that as well. Thank you.
Darren, you have your light on.
Uh-oh. What'd I say wrong?
So I would just like to point out that for clarification, correct, the zoning application is not before you. However, what is been presented to staff are the uses that will be in the zoning, that are in the zoning application. So as a board, you can consider that information today as you make your decision on whether to approve or deny transmittal.
But every use that you have is allowable.
They're uses that are identified in the zoning category consistent with this proposed land use.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, your light is on.
Thank you, Mayor. As the District Commissioner / Vice Mayor, I do want to kind of give my input a little bit on this and actually ask a question. Brian, you had briefly, Mr. Seymour, forgive me, briefly mentioned that you had been in talks, and I know we're not going there. This is just changing commercial low to potentially change to commercial low. And I believe even in what we had heard and in some of the letters, the intensity seemed to be the issue. So is there room, I guess, for more, if we approve this today, additional discussions on buffering and so on?
Yes.
And there is flexibility in that?
Yes.
Because, I mean, at the intersection of Seminole, Pratt Whitney, and North Lake, which is going 6 lanes, I mean, it seems like I wouldn't want a house on that corner. So it doesn't make sense to leave it rural residential. I mean, we have very small pockets throughout the acreage. Orange and Seminole Pratt is one of them that has, you know, a little shopping center surrounded by homes that don't seem to be impacted. And we're going to have some more future stuff coming on Coconut and North Lake. I don't see a reason why we shouldn't have some commercial low. If you look at this map, there is a ton of residents that live around there that would not want to have to drive 5-10 miles because we have all this traffic now. We didn't have that in 2010 to the degree we have it now. So going that far didn't take absorbent amount
You
of
have had your opportunity to speak. If you continue, you will be removed.
We have huge traffic issues, which we are trying to address as a board. So thank you guys for your support on that. So this is just one more corner that could prevent people from having to drive further and further and further. So commercial low makes sense. I don't see anyone wanting to build a home on a highway in the future. That doesn't make any sense in anyone's mind. I personally wouldn't want to live on a 6-lane road. potentially, don't shoot me, potentially 8 one day.
I'll be dead.
Yes. But the point is,
I'm not getting into that.
the point is, it seems to make sense for some commercial low. I haven't, we'll discuss, right, what exactly could potentially be acceptable as that commercial low, but I think it just makes sense to do this today, and then we'll see, you know, what we can work with the community. I plan to reach out to residents. I plan to expand it, because we, as a county, only send it to so many, a circumference around the site to let people know. I'm going to expand that search and reach out and get some input back from the people that will be directly impacted by this particular intersection. With that, I will make the motion, and I do want to add to the point of, I did want to adopt, I want to approve this, but I do want it, when it comes back, to have the land use and the zoning on the same day if we approve it.
We always understood that would happen. We
Okay.
completely agree with that. I don't know if you call it a condition or however you do it, but we think that makes sense.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion from the vice mayor to adopt the amendment with the land use and zoning coming back to us. We have a second by Commissioner Woodward and Commissioner Weiss, Commissioner Powell, and our attorney. Your lights are now on.
I just want to clarify, it's to transmit, not to adopt. We're at the
Okay, to
transmittal
transmit.
phase.
To transmit. Okay. So we have a first and a second. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. I will go ahead and support the transmittal today, but I'm speaking directly to the applicant. I would, based on, the potential staff recommendation on the intensity of what was in the original zoning request, please don't bring that back in that same form.
Commissioner Powell, and then Commissioner Sachs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And taking the staff report as a whole and looking at the addition of some of the neighborhood plans that are included, the Western North Lake Corridor Land Use Study, I know some of these things may need to be updated. I see some dates like 1998, 2010. I'd be interested in knowing what that looks like today, and considering the amount of traffic that we're seeing on our roads. So the challenge for me is, we've got a lot of information that's been presented in front of us. We've got the background, we've got the backup, we've got the studies, we've got comprehensive information here that would indicate that knowing that where we could potentially go could be problematic, and staff has already made a recommendation. So for me, the challenge is, I see what staff has recommended. I've heard from the residents, and I've heard our members of the board. I don't think this is something, although I would love to, and I think the applicant has done a really good job of putting their position forward. I think there's more that can be done, so I don't think it's something that I'll be supporting today.
Thank you. Commissioner Sachs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm concerned because of the denial by two boards and from our staff, and from hearing our residents, what they say about it. And I've listened to my colleagues. There's a lot more that needs to be done. My concern also is with regard to wells and possible degradation of the aquifers there, feed the wells. Probably have septic tanks out there as well. I always like to support the commissioner, district commissioner, because I think she knows the area better than anybody else. But I think we have some more work to be done on this, but I always support the commissioner and the district. So a heads up to the applicant, y'all got some work to do when it comes back. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Commissioner Flores.
I was trying to stay quiet. No, but I just want to echo Commissioners Weiss and Sachs' comments. I'm going to go along with this today, but when this comes back, I want it to be respectful of the community. I want to be respectful of the intensity. And I'm sort of leaning on this just because I'm looking for the district commissioner, and if she feels this is the right path, then I'll go along with it right now. But I want to make sure that we're very, very respectful of the intensity moving forward, and obviously making sure that water quality remains intact throughout this project. So thank you.
Thank you. And again, this is transmittal. This is nothing else other than transmittal. And I think we have no more lights on, so I'm going to go ahead and take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? See that the motion carries 6-1. Commissioner Powell dissenting.
Did we have a second?
We did.
Oh, okay.
We did.
Perfect. I'll be quiet.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Yeah, there's no river. But what are you going to do? And, you know, our job up here as commissioners is not always an easy one, and we have to take everyone into account when we make our decisions. And a decision to transmit means there's going to be more information coming before us. It does not mean that what is in front of us today is a talked about plan is what's going to be adopted. So I appreciate the petitioner working with the district commissioner and with the residents to see what is the proper intensity on that property. It is a corner piece. It is on a 6-lane roadway. It is next to where the county has all of their equipment right now to do the widening of North Lake Boulevard. It is surrounded by properties where the FAR has been discussed. I think if we do commercial low appropriately on this land, that's the proper use of it. So we have a motion to move to transmit 6-1. I think the discussion is over. Thank you. All right, we are now on to county proposed text initiation, resilience element initiation. Oh, Commissioner Flores, I apologize. I did not see your light.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about the outburst that just occurred. What's normally board policy for these individuals that ran out of here, pretty much insulting the integrity of this board? I feel that shouldn't happen. I know they ran out of here, but
Normally
moving
they would
forward,
be.
when they're allowed to come back, I think that there should be some.
There is usually notification from the mayor that if their outburst is an outburst and they do it repeatedly, they would be removed.
Yeah. So, you know, okay, is there any
Decorum, and on the comment cards, there is a paragraph about decorum. And some people do get passionate about what goes on in chambers, but as a rule, and it's a good rule, is if someone does an outburst like that, they will be asked to be removed.
And is there any chance, I know this didn't escalate to a more severe outburst, but is there an opportunity that they might not be allowed to come back the next time?
We're not going there today.
No.
Because we can't ban people from public comment unless, you know, they're threatening our lives. Then you can, and we've had that where someone was banned from chambers because we actually did get our lives threatened up here.
All right.
Yes, we did.
Thank you.
Dance on our graves.
Let's move on.
That was one of the comments. I remember it succinctly. Okay. Again, 5A1. Thank you.
Yes, I believe Megan Houston and Stacey Coceres from the county's Office of Resilience is here to present this item for initiation.
Hi, good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and
Can you pull
Commissioners.
the microphone down just a little if possible?
I'm a little
Or can we give her a little more volume? Thank you.
Can you hear me? Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. My name is Stacey Caceres. I am a Resilience and Sustainability Analyst with the Palm Beach County Office of Resilience. And today I'm just going to provide a brief overview of why the Office of Resilience is recommending to initiate the process to establish a dedicated resiliency element for Palm Beach County's comprehensive plan. The county has been investing in resiliency for decades to prepare for weather hazards like rising seas, stronger storms, and hotter days. County departments are always looking at how we can build better to harden our infrastructure so it lasts as long as it's planned to, and to reduce operational expenses by choosing efficient building equipment. Making these cost-effective investments now helps us save money in the long term. Some of these initiatives have been integrated into various county comprehensive plan elements. For example, the board approved a climate change goal to the future land use element in 2014. In 2020, the board approved a coastal management element, which has a coastal resilience goal. However, resiliency efforts are dispersed throughout the comp plan. In total, OOR and the Planning Division identified 44 resiliency-focused objectives within 11 of the 15 elements in the comp plan. The Office of Resilience is proposing to establish a resilience element to consolidate these efforts so that land use planning stakeholders, grant funders, and bond rating agencies, among others, can easily identify the comprehensive approach that Palm Beach County is taking. We also recommend identifying opportunities where we might need to align definitions and priorities throughout the comprehensive plan for consistent direction. Other jurisdictions, including Broward and Miami-Dade counties, Delray Beach, and Miami Beach, have taken similar approaches to update their comp plans in recent years. Stepping back for some history on why the Office of Resilience is bringing this forward, the board created the Office of Resilience in 2017 to lead the county's resilience planning, implementation activities, and sustainability efforts. Through pilot projects, grant funding, and research, OOR helps county departments plan for extreme weather events and support sustainable development. We also help departments secure critical infrastructure funding, ensuring the county maintains the essential services that our residents depend on. The resilience element will cohesively guide Palm Beach County and the Office of Resilience in proactive land use planning. Much has changed since the original comprehensive plan was developed. For example, a state of Florida executive order directs all local governments to conduct a sea level rise and flooding vulnerability assessment by 2026. Palm Beach County is ahead of schedule with this executive order, as you know from the results that we've shared with the board. The county's vulnerability assessment reveals that flooding and extreme heat are the most pressing vulnerabilities assessed. We plan to review the elements to make sure that flooding and heat are being addressed sufficiently and consistently. In addition, the resiliency element will incorporate decades of board direction and emerging county research. One of the most important partnerships that the board established in 2009 was the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact with Broward, Miami-Dade, and Monroe counties. The board has consistently adopted the compact's unified sea level rise projections and the compact's regional climate action plan. The resiliency element will align with this prior board direction and integrate findings from the county's 2024 Vulnerability Assessment and Resilience Action Plan. The resilience element will be organized into 5 key strategies: adaptation to protect the county from weather-related shifts, mitigation to increase energy efficiency, sustainability to reduce environmental impacts from the built environment, community engagement to ensure broad support and appropriate outcomes for our residents, and collaborative planning with our regional partners to maximize resources and data for effective planning. Staff has indicated a motion to initiate. On January 10th, the Planning Commission made a motion 10-2 to initiate as well. Thank you very much for having me. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I see no lights on. Any discussion? Would someone like to make a motion to initiate?
I have a comment.
Oh, Commissioner Baxter.
Questions.
Commissioner Baxter has some questions. Excuse me, Vice Mayor Baxter has some questions.
Forgive me, I have a terrible headache. But going over this, so we are starting, just clarify, summarizing, make sure I understand, a resiliency element, okay? Is what I'm understanding?
Yes.
And what, summarizing it, what does resiliency mean to you?
It's helping us prepare the county and our initiatives to handle anything that might come our way in the future and be able to bounce back.
Okay. That's very broad. When I understood resiliency, it had to do with flooding, it had to do with keeping, natural things that are naturally occurring kind of from trying to mitigate that to the best we can, because nobody can really control nature, right? Is that similar to what we're trying to do here?
Hi, good morning. Megan Houston, Resilience Director for Office of Resilience. Here to step in for some of the background and the context. So, resiliency can be seen as broad. We try to have it in those buckets of adaptation, mitigation, sustainable development to focus on what we can best advise the county on, because it is related to weather-related impacts. So yes, we have emergency management, we have our building division, everyone is working really well on, kind of those overlapping issues. But when we're talking about how do we need to look at the past and how will that inform the future, what is the science telling us, what are the county departments doing on their own, because we have champions throughout our 6,000 employees. How can we consolidate that information in a way that makes sense? Because we do have to communicate. Stacey mentioned our bond rating agencies. They come and audit us and they say, what are you all doing to make sure that we can, rate you well?
You're covering a lot, and I'm having more questions as you're speaking.
Okay,
So maybe we
perfect.
can take these as we go.
Sure.
Building. So do we not have Florida building codes that are in line with kind of resiliency?
We do have, we're lucky and unlucky, right, from Hurricane Andrew, that our building code was updated because of that extensive damage. So for things like wind issues, absolutely, states look to us on how we build things. Our affordable housing folks, our HED folks go, beyond building code when they're talking about helping our residents make improvements that help them shelter in place. So some of those things that they're working on would be, in my opinion, resiliency efforts that might not be prescribed in the building code, but are smart investments like hurricane impact windows and better insulation and making sure that people are building things correctly to deal with mold and humidity. So yes, we have a good building code.
And
there
we
are
have
ways that we can do better.
a building department that does that. See, my concern is that what this sounds like to me is really more regulation. And we know that regulations, when they're passed on to building, and we make it more and more difficult and more red tape, what does that do to cost? It increases the cost. And the costs get passed down to buyers. And everything is so high right now. So anything that is adding, and I don't know where this is turning out. I love the idea of trying to make us resilient to natural disasters, trying to mimic what the state does, but the idea that we're adding this to buildings that are coming in and applying it to every individual site, and then what department is this going to fall under?
Well, to the first part about red tape and regulation, we did a thorough evaluation of what's existing already across those 15 elements. 11 elements already address resiliency in some way, and that's 44 goals, objectives, policies that we found just on, that is supportive of what we're talking about, right? So it's existing in there. When we mentioned the history and talked about board direction already, there are existing principles that that's what we're looking at, how to consolidate and make sure.
I agree with that, which is why I asked the next question, which department does this fall under?
This would be managed by the Office of Resilience, and I'll look at Stephanie and Tui just to make sure that's how.
And is that, because this is the first I'm hearing of a whole separate office, is this a separate department? Is this something we're starting that is going to be asking for new positions and more funding?
No, excuse me, if I may, Stacey mentioned that the board approved the Office of Resilience back in 2017. It became staffed in 2018. So we are one of the newest offices, but we are already on the books.
So if we're already doing this, we already have 11 resiliency things added. We already have the office. This is already, what are we doing today?
Today, we're asking to initiate a process for having a standalone new element that will.
What's an element?
An element is one of the 15 comprehensive planning chapters, really, or sections that guide development.
So it's another section, another place that has to be checked off in order, another box.
Another section of how policy can be grouped together. We can have it scattered across. We can have folks not necessarily thinking about resiliency in a way that's integrated, but in terms of, breaking down silos and looking at things holistically, it makes sense to put it in one place. That's something that people are asking, what are your resiliency efforts? What are your investments that you're doing? It's something that we can point to when we're applying to grants, that we have taken those proactive approaches. Resilient Florida is a state-funded program. The Palm Beach County folks, our infrastructure departments do extremely well, at bringing those dollars in, because we are a good investment to make, because we know what we're doing. This is another step to demonstrate that we are being proactive.
And to your point, yes, another step. Resiliency is important. I just don't want this to become another thing that grows out of control of adding on all these things. And really, we have bullet points here in our item summary that basically, I'm going to read it. It says, the Palm Beach County Office of Resiliency is requesting to establish a resiliency element with a comprehensive plan and may result in revisions, definitions, and policies in other comprehensive plan elements if needed for consistency. The resiliency element will address adaptation strategies that protect the county from climate-related impacts. Love that. Mitigation strategies that reduce county greenhouse emissions. How do we do that?
One example.
And how do we track that?
Very good question. So we do inventories. We've done inventories at the county looking at how we, on tracking those metrics. In terms of reducing emissions, we look at cost-effective ways to do so. We have
an example.
Roughly $30 million electric bill that the county pays for just on our property every year.
Okay.
Our facilities folks are looking at doing energy audits to see where we can save money, so we're not air conditioning the outside when we don't need to be. They're looking at replacing HVAC systems with more efficient equipment, or putting in LED light fixtures in garages to reduce
I'm good.
those operations.
That's
So those
good.
are
I just want to
examples.
make sure.
Yes, those are examples.
You're
of-
understanding
right.
each other.
Mhm.
All right, so sustainability development initiatives reduce environmental impact from the built environment and promote resource conservation. I actually think I get that, so we're gonna, but then we get to number 4, we have social equity strategies to ensure community involvement in resilience planning and equitable resiliency outcomes. How do you see that? What is the goal of that?
Sure, I'd love to give an example there. When we were doing climate workshops of, what is a vulnerability assessment? We're going to be asking the community to come and comment, so we want to make sure we're explaining what that is before we come. We went out to Belglade and Pahokee and did workshops of, what are you seeing? How are you being impacted right now? People said, you know what, our park system, we love our parks, we want more shade there. And so that's an example of hearing what the community says, then looking at the data to back it up, where it said 5 to 10% tree canopy coverage in the Glades area is what we have there. That's not great. We want to see more 35% coverage. So we're using data, we're using community input to then change how we would prioritize grant opportunities. So we went out, we got a federal grant to plant, $1 million, well, not $1 million worth of trees, we got $1 million of tree money to put 400 trees at our park sites, over 6 parks in the Glades, and give away 2,000 trees.
Which is great, and I've actually talked to the director, Jennifer, about this. I think it's fantastic. Well, I guess what I'm asking is, how does this resiliency element initiation help something that we already are doing? How does it help it better?
It would put in language the efforts that we are doing to show how we are prioritizing efforts based off of what the community needs.
Okay. I think that was all my questions, so thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I have a lot of lights on, but Patrick?
Just wanted to touch on it as one of the participants in the original words that were written a number of years ago. The big thing for this is the words that were written a number of years ago and what's happened through the course of time. The world has changed. 10 years ago, there were not DEP grants. There weren't resilient grants. Our legislative priorities did not include this sort of thing. What we have done through the course of time is cobbled things together. This board has discussed septic to sewer. This board has discussed solar the other day, for instance. Stormwater issues, water supply issues. They're all sprinkled throughout the plan in different places. The big thing here, and this is a policy driver, to the Vice Mayor's point, this isn't driving new regulations. These are policy pieces expressing the board's desires on policies, whether it's in setting state legislative priorities, federal legislative priorities, when we apply for grants, things of that sort. It expresses the board's desires, how they want to move forward with these sort of things. So don't want to leave you with the thought it's creating a whole layer of new regulations. Should something need to be addressed, it would come to you separately. This is one place to consolidate all the policies that you have in this one structure to make it more understandable and readable.
And to your point, Pat, I think that's a great part of it. I would love having resiliency to the point of applying for grants, bringing dollars back. That's absolutely phenomenal. But again, this is regulation, and I just don't want it to get out of control and become this whole new beast. And you say it comes to us, but when staff comes to us and we trust that they need it, a lot of times things just go through and we don't always understand the ramifications of that until afterwards. So I just don't want this to be another source of this turning into more problems.
I understand your point. Yes.
Thank you. Darren, your light is also on.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that when this comes back, it'll come back with a business impact estimate because it's a county-initiated comprehensive plan amendment. So, yeah, you'll have some of that information quantified.
Okay. Commissioner Flores.
Just want to make the motion to initiate.
Second.
Oh, okay. So we have a motion and a second. I still have lights on. Commissioner Powell, your light is on?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Mayor. I want to go back to the beginning of the meeting. No.
The beginning of time?
I want to go back to where Commissioner Baxter was coming from with regard to, new regulations, right? And with full disclosure, last year I served in a committee in the legislature, in the Senate, on the committee, the Select Committee on Resiliency. And I recognize that we here in the state of Florida over the last few years have seen a higher level and intensity of storms that have impacted the coastlines. We in Palm Beach County have been lucky. We've seen some damage, but we haven't seen the amount of damage that they've seen on the West Coast. But with that being said, this proposed amendment to the comp plan or a new element, will this element have goals, objectives, and policies? And if those goals, objectives, and policies are there, will those policies indeed be new regulations that are or could be considered additional red tape?
We are not at that point where we have that level of detail, but what we have started with are things more of for planning purposes, like, hey, a risk assessment every few years is a good idea to make sure we're staying up to trend. So those kinds of things of, what we're already doing now, but memorialized to make sure we are staying current on informed decision making. We don't see this as, I think, to go with Patrick Retter's direction, right? This is not, hey, there was a bunch of new regulations coming down, because we are mindful of the context and the developer challenges already. We're mindful of all of that. It's more of can we think and can we be thoughtful and include the direction that already exists in these planning tools to make sure we're harmonized, that the emergency management element and the coastal management element are both perhaps talking about responding to disasters, but is it consistent? Are they speaking to each other? Are we talking about heat, right, in a way that is getting attention, like flooding? And we know the challenges with sunny day flooding and heat and all of that, or sunny day flooding, but maybe when we're planning for bus structures, right, we talk about having the importance of shade around those bus structures. We're not at the level of fine-tuning all of those aspects, but broadly speaking, it's about consolidating our approaches that already exist and making sure we're following them. And one way to do that really well is to bring it all home and look at it together and see how they play and interact and help us, determine how we should be looking at our comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Several years ago, only a few years ago, I was doing an assistantship with this department called the Department of Community Affairs, which has been replaced by the Department of Economic Opportunity, now the Commerce Department. The comp plan, at the time, it was more intense. The comp plans were reviewed frequently. How often, and I don't want to go too far outside the scope of what we're looking at here, how often are comp plans reviewed, and how often do you believe this element would be reviewed, and who would be reviewing it? Do you know?
I'll pass that back to my planning colleagues.
So I think it depends on what is put in the element. So in terms of what strategies they have, is it going to be reviewed against land use amendments? It really just depends on what type of policies are put into that specific element.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do an ear. Can you talk about the ear for a second?
Oh, sure. Yeah, the EAR, we're required to update it. We're required to update the comprehensive plan every 7 years. We are due to do that in November of 2026. So we're required to look at state requirements that have changed since the last year, and then also to address new local conditions.
Thank you. And that would be community, what is that department? Department of Commerce now. Mm-hmm. Commerce, not economic. Do they get back to you? Once you submit the comp plan, how soon do they respond, if at all?
So they're required to provide us comments within 30 days of transmittal of the packet to the state. And that's with all of the other agencies that also review it. So FDOT, those other reviewing agencies.
Thank you for that. With this not being this element, although we do have a new element that's required, the property rights element, that's not brand new, but it was there. The legislature put that into play. This is not a required element. Is this something that the state would look at with a fine-tooth comb to see if it impacts the state or impacts new regulation, or is this an element that they might just breeze over? Do you know?
Yeah, so the state has kind of a narrow review of what they're supposed to be looking at for items that have a state critical component. And so that's how those agencies would be reviewing this element should the board ultimately transmit it and adopt it.
Thank you. Final follow-up, and this piggybacks off what the Vice Mayor was asking with regard to this resiliency element. And I heard the part about the potential to apply for grants. Why else, or why indeed should we consider this? Is this something that's better to have and not need, or is it something that will we still be able to apply for grants? Does this impact us in a way that it's beneficial for us to have this resiliency element?
Sure. A lot of what we're proposing is, I keep saying the 11 of the 15, right? And there are 40, just on our initial review, 44 different goals, policies, and objectives scattered throughout different elements right now. So it's a good way for county departments to think through and look at it holistically to say, yeah, this is, you know, when we're looking at it all together, we can see how what we do impacts each other, and we can see those. I think it's easier to make connections when you're reading something that is related all together rather than trying to piece through, I don't know how many pages, 1,000 pages or something of what the 15 elements contain. It's a way to, you know, this is initiation to have those conversations with departments too. We're gonna go meet with those 15, right? And say, here's what we're seeing in what you're doing. Here's, you know, how is that working, or where are the challenges already? So what's on the books, we can look at and evaluate it in a way that hasn't happened since the Office of Resilience was created. And one of the reasons the office was created was to have that centralized hub of people looking with that lens, knowing what we know from what, you know, grants are funding in terms of those risk assessments, and be able to have those discussions with our departments. So yes, grant funders are going to care about this, but also county departments, it's a way to have those conversations so that, you know, as part of under the umbrella of, right, these cross-departmental teams and breaking down silos, this is a process that through 2025 we'll be able to, I think, advance that unity of how we're thinking about building in a proactive way for the county.
Thank you. Do you know of any other counties or municipalities that have a resiliency element, or would we be the first to your knowledge?
We would not be the first. Broward County has one, Miami-Dade. Sometimes they put sustainability or resiliency with the environmental element too, but certainly Broward County, Miami-Dade, Miami Beach, Delray, and then you know, a handful of others. It's becoming more of a common practice in Florida when there are dedicated staff people who can take this on, and they, you know, we're lucky that the board had invested in this initiative to have those dedicated staff people to be able to. So generally, it falls in line with people who have resiliency staff on hand who are able to prioritize that. They've started to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Woodward.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for this presentation and for the great discussion we're having today. As I understood this, it's like we are adding another chapter, but a lot of this you'll be taking what exists in other chapters and kind of putting it all into one. Is that how I understand this? Like the beginning of this process will be highlighting existing regulations or existing parts of our comp plan and putting it all into one singular chapter. Am I right in my thinking on that?
We are going to look and see, of those 44, it might be, you know, that's our first review, it might be 100, I don't know, but definitely 44. We're going to look at it and see what might have to stay where it is, like the coastal management element. I'm bringing that up because I, you know that one a little bit. Like maybe there are things that per regulation or per requirement of the state, things rightfully should belong where they are, but we will be able to, you know, maybe reference that in that element, right? Like, of course, we support X, Y, and Z, see this other chapter for more information. So it could be, I think it'll be a little bit of both, but where we can consolidate, we're going to try to do that.
And so some of this, to the Vice Mayor's concern about, you know, adding regulations, would some of this be considered maybe best practices moving forward, where it's not necessarily a requirement, but it would be, you know, a strong suggestion? And this is something that we could look at. I mean, and afraid to bring it back up, but the discussion we had earlier today about having a gas station potentially close to wells or whatever, would some of this be able to address certain concerns like that when we're talking well water or some of these others, where you would have all of this in a chapter, and then when we have an applicant that comes in, if they're checking a lot of these resilient boxes, would give it maybe a little more weight to could be a successful project and something that we could point to that this project is doing these things versus it, they could have to go into 11 different places now to find it. Is that something that would help us, would benefit applicants and the board in the future?
I think so. I mean, maybe it's not, again, like a specific regulation, but it could be more of how is this in line with aspirational, we should be thinking about green infrastructure. We should be, those kinds of things. And then it would be discussion points that people could expand upon so that you would have that information.
I would like to see, as this gets developed, that type of thinking to go into it, because a lot of times we will send an applicant away and say, when this comes back, do better, kind of, we say it better than that, I think. But if this is part of what they could utilize to come back with a better project for the area in consideration of what they're building around, I think that would be hugely beneficial for us in that regard. And then, again, the best practices versus regulations. I think it's important for us to know, and if we're going to make any policy changes in the future, like which category are we putting this under? If we're making a requirement, it needs to be clear to us so we can think about the consequences of those decisions versus, is this something we would just like to strongly recommend? And then, again, I like that you brought up the tree canopy, because this was something we talked about. This is low-hanging fruit where there's really hot spots around the county, and I'm all for planting more trees. It helps with shade, and it helps soak up carbon dioxide, all the good things. And then I like that we're highlighting existing efforts, and this will be moving forward. My question is, would any of this help with our residents and businesses for insurance? Because we know insurance is a big question. It's just constantly going up. And if we're doing all of these efforts, would this give us the ability to maybe go to the state or someone to look, we're doing all of this stuff. Our residents are doing this. Can we have the insurance companies, they should have to look at the efforts that are being made and consider that when they're handing down premiums.
And I think that's an interesting approach. I'm not an expert in how insurance, regulations and companies can go ahead and set that. But it is, when we're talking about being in line with the My Safe Florida program, which is designed to help people harden their homes to then reduce insurance premiums and getting grant funding to do that. I mean, I think that's an amazing program where you see what kind of partnerships are possible when people have the information and the guidance to do that. So, I mean, I know we get into a whole CRS discussion, which is its own thing, but I think it's certainly worth seeing what kind of conversations can be had about that and how you can align those partnerships.
Thank you. And this may be a question for some of our legislative team to kind of help with on and maybe it won't help at all, but if it's something that we could put as we go to Tallahassee and ask for some, not that they can help with insurance, but maybe making sure that insurance companies are really looking at the local area. If we're putting this amount of effort into hardening our area and protecting ourselves as much as we can, the residents should benefit from that and not have to pay such high premiums. So thank you. That's the last of my questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Sachs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You all do a great job, your office. If we initiate this today, what fiscal impact will it have for our taxpayers?
Great question. I know that's on a lot of people's minds. I think, as our Assistant County Attorney had mentioned, we would have to do a business impact assessment.
Yeah, a business impact estimate, like we did on the, there was one item we did today where it had one.
The bioscience.
In other words,
bioscience, right.
So this is, how much is it going to cost us?
The county.
Oh, okay.
Us here.
To explore.
Just all of Stacey's staff time.
That's Stephanie's fault, right?
Yeah. No. In terms
Maybe
of how much
nothing.
it'll cost us, it'll be in kind, right? It'll be staff time working together. So we have, our planning division has been amazing in supporting Office of Resilience staff in starting this process. So in terms of cost, it would be staff time of
So it wouldn't be additional
Correct.
costs to open up this resiliency program project element that you're asking us to do? Because I know you have an office, you come see me, I love it. I don't understand 50% of what you talk about half the time, but I think it's a good thing. So it's no additional costs, right? That would,
Correct.
okay, very good.
Other
And
than we would, it's a priority for 2025, so we would not be working on other things. We would be focused on this.
Okay, I'm talking fiscal. And I think what Senator Powell, or Commissioner Powell, was talking about is very, very important. The state has this great program for the entire state. And until recently, they had a great, very important person as part of that committee. But now he's with us here. So I think it's good. Let us know that you are connecting with the state in terms of what they're doing. That way we don't duplicate our efforts. If you need any phone numbers, I'm sure Commissioner Powell could give you direct access to that group. And another thing is, the last question I have is, will you be aiding our Planning and Zoning Commission to help them determine what impact certain applications have with regard to resiliency? In other words, what we discussed today. I mean, communities have well water, but we also have dry cleaning factories close to us, or gas stations, or these are important elements, especially today. So as long as you're going to be of help to our standing committees on these issues, to help us understand whether we should have an application for gas stations or other things like that, commercial entities, how that would impact our environment, that's very important, and that will happen, won't it? Okay, very good. Thank you very much for your effort. Thank you.
Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for your presentation this morning. And I just, I thought there were a lot of really good questions, and it also, I think, and I'm just trying to see how people are watching this from home and how they might view some of this and saying, well, they don't have all these answers to all these questions. So I just want to go through and help explain the process that we're doing today. Today is the initiation, which gives staff permission to work on this, that you haven't had permission to work on it. Therefore, it would be very difficult to have a lot of specificity to some of the inquiries that will be made. But you'll return, if we initiate, you'll return for transmittal, where we'll be able to really get into the details of what's in this element. And then it'll come back another time again when we have an opportunity to once again relook at it, and that would be at the adoption. So there would be another 2 public hearings on this before it ever is finalized. So I wanted to clarify that for folks that are watching, because I saw people were asking very specific questions, and you had said, well, when if we work on it. And the reason is you haven't been given permission by the board to work on this yet. So, and then, and this is just my own pet peeve, but I prefer calling things smart rather than green, because I think it's the smart thing to do. So maybe you want to include things like that as you move forward. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Sachs actually had brought up something. I love the idea of having our program not duplicate state regulation and even be more strict, but at the same time, having it align, if it's already in place there and it's something somebody already has to do, why do we need to require it again? Stuff like that. And to the point of the My State Florida programs, they do have a decent amount of programs at the state, but they haven't prioritized based on any sort of income or status. Are we planning to do that with this program?
That was an example of how insurance savings and investments are being made to benefit the consumer. So I'm not suggesting that we would start a program in that same way, but maybe
I'm saying, but this program, are we trying to prioritize different groups of people?
the goals, the policies broadly right now are things that are good for the county in general, but we would prioritize where there's low tree canopy coverage, for example.
That's not groups of people, that's areas.
Yeah, that would be areas of low canopy.
Correct.
Right, or, I mean, people who would be impacted the most, if we're looking at a map and saying the map shows that these areas have a lot of county assets that might be susceptible to flooding, it's generally geography based, right? It's based off of the hazards and the locations, and we're focused on putting resources where it makes the most sense based off that data.
And what's best for the most amount of people?
Correct.
All right. I just want to make sure that we aren't prioritizing and having, because we do a lot of programs. I don't want this to become another sort of specialized for certain groups of people and not other. If it needs it in the county, it needs it. If it needs it at a park, it needs it.
Right.
I don't want this, because there was some backup information that was a little more driven in a different direction.
I'm going to clarify when I said correct about what benefits the most people, specific to the tree project in the Glades, right? That's not our highest density population area, but that was a time where we said, that the need is so demonstratively profound that it makes sense to prioritize
But
that
that
area.
park didn't
Yes.
have trees.
Correct.
Regardless
Correct.
of the residents, the
Right.
park itself didn't have enough
Correct.
canopy coverage.
Correct.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I actually haven't weighed in, so I'm going to weigh in now. A couple of things. Yes, we need to know what the business impact is. Are we adding regulations? Are we adding costs? Are we adding staff? How much of this is going to affect the business of the county? As you said, and it piqued my interest when you said we pay $30 million in an electric bill. How much would we save if we kept it 2 degrees warmer in this building than we do now? 3 degrees. I mean, we're all wearing sweaters because we're cold. So have we looked at that? So when you're going through this, and how much does this affect businesses and residences? But generally speaking, from our confusion up here, we need a lot more clarity as to what this is trying to accomplish, because we have a lot of questions, and now we are giving you the ability to go and answer our questions, do the research. I mean, if this is in 11 other elements, does it mean you're taking them out of those 11 elements and just having this one? And obviously you have to talk with zoning and planning and all of the other departments, but we do have cross-departmental teams, so you should already be talking about this. We're going to leave here with giving you a lot of questions, and I hope when you come back, you've answered them, because I'm leaving here with not a lot of answers. So we had Commissioner Flores was the first, Commissioner Weiss was the second. Is there any more discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? See that the motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I believe we are at the last item on our agenda.
Yes, Mayor and Vice Mayor and Commissioners. The last item is 5B1. This is the Urban Land Institute Southeast Florida Caribbean PPC density contract. The Planning Division would like to engage the ULI, for short, to do a project to review 2 key density programs, the transfer development rights as well as the workforce housing program, and provide recommendations and streamlining recommendations to the program. There are very complex programs with different constituency. We hope that the ULI is a well-respected nonprofit educational research institute, that they can give a second, opinion and look on this. Again, this is pro bono, so it's free to the county. In the backup material, there's a timeline as well as a scope. The next to the last page has a detailed scope and tasks that they need to do. So with their leadership project, it consists of seasoned professional that gathers a team and they take the task at hand seriously, and they produce a deliverable that will be presented to the board. It is anticipated around late June, July, when they will come back to do this, and this is the first time that they have this engagement with the county, and they're very excited to do so. And they do really, with these projects, they do compete among each other in different groups, and so, it's a highly respected organization, so we're happy to just have this engagement. It may lead to further, tasks to help us with some of the challenges we have. So with that, the motion is to approve this contract.
Thank you. Commissioner Sacks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an excellent idea, and I think that I really applaud our planning division and every one of you to look at this. We are changing so rapidly in this county. There's so many different elements. So I would, at this time, move to receive and file this contract.
The motion would be to approve.
Yeah, on the add delete, we did, since this is exempted from our purchasing requirement, it is recommended that the board approve this contract. So it is, I'm
Move
sorry
to approve.
mention again, yeah.
So I have a motion from Commissioner Sacks, a second from Commissioner Flores. Any more discussion? All in favor? All opposed? See, the motion carries 7-0. We're going to go to comments now. Assistant County Attorney.
I don't have any comments.
Planning Director.
Just a quick comment. Just wanted to recognize some of our staff who's had their 20 and 25 years with the county. Just want to do that, as well as give an update to the board on the Boynton Beach annexation process. So the report is there is no changes to the status of their feasibility study. We provided each of your office the correspondence from the city of Boynton Beach. Staff will be still continuing to monitor it on a quarterly basis and report to the board back. So there's a website for those and the members of the public who wants to know. The city created a website, and they'll be posting all of their updates on there, as well as public meetings. So.
Thank you. Zoning Director. Lisa's not here. Anybody wanted to speak for her?
I volunteer Whitney.
Well, Whitney's next.
No comments.
Thank you. Whitney Carroll.
No comments, thank you.
Patrick.
No comment.
Perfect. Commissioners. Commissioner Flores, anything? Commissioner Sacks? None. Commissioner Woodward?
Just thank you, staff, for the work today.
Commissioner Powell?
Thank you, staff, for your work, and also for the people who were here and who are here, taking their time out to come and participate. Thank you.
Commissioner Weiss?
Ditto Commissioner Powell.
Vice Mayor?
Ditto the previous commissioners.
Ditto. Have a great day, 11:33. Bye-bye.